I have my friend Chalese Stevens with us today. She is a fellow bereaving mom and the founder of Rainy Day Foundation. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Also an author, extraordinarily powerful person and strength, just a powerhouse. I'm in awe with everything I'm learning about you. You're an amazing writer, by the way. In fact, I think that's where I want to start. I think this is actually going to be a good segue because I came across a poem of yours and immediately it just resonated with me. And obviously, for obvious reasons, it will. But the title of it is Misery. And did you write this? I'm assuming.
Yeah, I wrote that.
Okay. It doesn't say anything at the bottom, but it's in your book. So I would assume that. Let me just show this book because you are a published author, Finding 40, A Mother's Walk with Grief, Chalese Stevens. You can find this online, Amazon, I'm assuming. Yes?
Yep, Amazon, Barnes & Noble. Yep.
Okay. But the title is Misery, and it says, I might cry. Misery cries sympathy. We all know how to feel. Spiders, lies, and naked eyes judge us with what's not real. Delusion for conclusion. There's never one last time. No telling what's tomorrow. All answers you must find. Creating raw emotions. Devastation. Candles out. There's nothing to look forward to. No songs to sing about. Sorry. But pity, tears, and sorrow only leave you wanting more. Satisfaction guaranteed. Then why still looking at the door? Tiny little footsteps. Sparkling fires in the eyes. Sorry, I gotta wipe my tears first because I can't even read it now. Sparkling fires in the eyes, in our hearts to keep forever a world of star-filled skies. Live while being dead, if that's what's best to do, or turn the knob and open to see the world that's you. The reason why this resonated so much with me is because it's so well, I feel like, describes kind of what you go through with grief, like that ever pending doom of just like, not just hopelessness, but that lost feeling. Like you mourn the loss of yourself. You know, when you lose a child, everything changes, everything shifts, and you mourn the loss of who you used to be. And that's kind of what that reminded me of, is just like no hope, lights are out, there's no joy in music, everything that you found before that was joyful before the loss of a child, it's like the world just stops and joy is gone. There's nothing that can bring you joy. And it's an overwhelming, just pending doom and pain and a life sentence, right? How many times did you think, why did you give me this life sentence? So this is our common thread. And we met through a friend of ours connected the two of us because you had started a foundation, a nonprofit. Do you want to talk a little bit about, or where would you like to start? Should we start with maybe, let's talk about Caleb, actually. Can we start with that?
Caleb was my son, and he was 4 years old, and I took him to a water park, and it was such a fun day. And I'd been really actually struggling. That's the thing. Like, I'd been really struggling to being a single mom of this wild kid for the last couple of years, and his dad wasn't really in the picture. He was kind of in and out, but it was mostly on me. And so finally, I was taking him to do something fun because it'd been pretty good lately. And I was so excited to go to this water park with them, and we were laughing that day. And it was like the best day we'd had in a long time, because being a single mom is not easy. and it's constant stress. And I was, trying to get my life together while raising this little boy, and we were getting ready to leave, actually. And I turned to my friend and I was like, let's go. And he was playing with her kids and everything. And I said, we should go get our stuff. And we kind of talked for a second. And then that's when I saw them pulling a kid out of the pool. And I was like, that's not my boy. And like, as I'm walking over there, like, of course, not wanting to believe it, but I knew. And yeah, he had drowned, and it was that they never were able to get a pulse. They never were able to revive him. And I wasn't able to go in the helicopter with them to Primary Children's. I had to drive. My friend drove me 2 primary children's, and it was the longest 20 minutes of my entire life. And I walked in, they were like, they knew who I was, or, well, I told them who I was, and they took me back, and I said, that means he's okay, right? And the nurse shook her head no. And then I just collapsed, and it was, yeah. So, but that was, I mean, it was devastating, of course. Like I was like, how do I do this? I don't know how to do this. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I didn't want to tell anyone. I felt guilty for being a mom. I felt, or for not being able to save my son. And that was my job. And I couldn't, like, there was nothing I could have done.
I didn't want to skip over the whole mother's guilt thing, because I feel like that is a common theme for bereaving parents. And I think it's something that we really should talk about, because it's a hard spot to be, and it's a place that you really have to mentally be aware of, so that you can realize that this is not your fault, right? Accidents happen, and
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's talk. Can we just touch on mother's guilt for a little bit?
I would actually love to. I actually feel very strongly about this. I've been obviously dealing with this for, 16 and a half years, a little bit more than that now. And I mean, it does lessen, it does go away. It comes back every once in a while. But the thing that I have really grown passionately about is whenever accidents happen, and you hear about them all the time on the news, things happen all the time. And the first thing people do outside looking in is try to find blame. They shame you as a mom or a parent. They blame you. They need to find reasons, and it always falls back on, well, you should have been there. You should have been watching. You should have, done this. I never would have let that happen if it was me. And they sit there and they ridicule the parents so bad. And actually, when this happened to me, my friend came over and he's like, do not turn on the news, whatever you do. Because there was interviews of the accident, and I've never even seen it, but they were coming up with their own conclusions of what happened, and really saying, like, she should have been there, and I was there. That's the thing, like, and they don't know the story. They don't know, but everybody wants to find blame. And for some reason, we as human beings need to have an answer, need to have a why, and it always falls back on the parents. I mean, their story, I hear them all the time, and we won't get into all the stories I hear, but it's like the things that people say, especially when accidents happen. When you say that a mom or a dad should have been there, or that if I were there, if I was that mom, I wouldn't have, you don't know what you would have been doing. And so many times accidents happen in a split second, and there's no reason for them. It's an accident, called an accident for a reason. And it doesn't help the parent, the grieving parent, who's already blaming themselves. They're already, if they could turn back time, they would do it in a heartbeat. It's not that they didn't love their kid. It's not that they weren't, being present with their kid or paying attention. Like sometimes, and you know how quick it is when the little kid can run off, and then you're like, where did my kid go?
I was just going to say, I can't think how many times in my entire adulthood or as a parent that something majorly bad almost happened or could have happened, and by God's grace, it didn't happen. So, yep. It's hard because you're right. I mean, I think people want to put blame somewhere, right? I mean, even when so I didn't have the same experience as you. I had mother's guilt because again, the thousands of things that day that would have changed that one outcome, right? Thousands of things that day. But I wasn't the only one living in the 1,000 things that day. I mean, his cousins were living in the thousands of things they could have done different. And my daughters were living in theirs, and my mom was living. I mean, I think everybody feels so much guilt. I had no idea that you went through that, though, and that how horrible. I know my sister's gone through her own stuff with her child and her children. One of her kids fell out of a 2-story, and she had to hear about that too. Like, how do you let your kid, and why wasn't the screen shut, and why wasn't it screwed? Yeah. I mean, the thing is that we have to be gentle to parents, right? Because accidents do happen. We would never, ever in a million years put our children in harm's way. I mean, you have to know the love of your child, and then to lose a child and have to deal with that kind of negativity and that kind of judgment. I can't even imagine, Chalese. Yeah. And I did not have that same experience. And I am so sorry to hear that you did. And I hope that anybody listening to this broadcast and to us today would please just kindly consider where your thoughts are when a parent loses a child. I mean, it is the most devastating thing that there's nothing in comparison that I can even wrap my head around that would even pale in comparison to the pain that you feel when you lose a child. And then imagine feeling like the whole entire world is blaming you for the loss of your child. I can't even imagine. So please just give parents grace. You know, it's hard enough losing a child, but then to feel like the weight of the world is on your shoulders and that there's judgment coming from every side. I can't even imagine how hard that would have been.
Yeah.
So how do you get through that, Chalese? How do you get through feeling like the whole entire world is judging you? You've now just lost your child. Isn't it funny too? Because I want to talk about the hospital. When Talon's accident happened, I just kept feeling like if they just got him to the hospital, they'd be able to save him, right? So when you walk in and you're like, good, he's here, he's fine. Where's my child? Let me hug him and talk to him and see him. Right? Because you feel like you're finally at the hospital where he's going to be alive, he's going to live, he's breathing, we have all this faith. And then it's so where do you tell me this is your world that you live in? You're surrounded by this negativity and you are now in this deepest despair because you have lost your child.
Oh, well, so honestly, what I did, I mean, I wanted to hide. I wanted to hide from the world. I didn't want anybody to know. And obviously, you know, I have to tell people. And luckily my friend Rose, who's since passed away, she's also, I write about her in my book. She was I don't know what I would have done without her, but she made almost every phone call for me at first to tell the people about it, because I'm like, I can't, like, how do you tell somebody that this just happened? Like, and the first thing I said to my mom when she walked in was, tell me I'm a good mom. And I'm like, yeah.
You said that to your mom?
I said that to my mom. I was like, I'm a good mom, aren't I? And as I'm holding my son in my arms. And she pretty much got sick, and she wasn't, I mean, she was like, of course you are, honey. But like it was, I mean, it's just one of those things where it's like, how do you do it? And that's where there's so many, that's why I'm like, I had to write this book too, because there's not one right way. There's not one way that somebody deals with it. But for me, because I've always been there for everybody, I'm always that person that's been there and helped people through so much. This time I was like, no. And I shut myself away from the world. There was only a couple people that I would let into my world. And that's why I ended up actually getting into self-medicating because it was easy. It wasn't easy, but it was an escape, and it was a way to shut myself in a hole that I didn't have to deal with people. I didn't have to answer my phone. I didn't have to talk to anybody. I could just be alone. And and I wasn't, I mean, alone with the people that I let in. Those were the only people. There was a select few. And actually, it was one of those nights that I wrote that poem when I was totally in that escape mode. And I was self-medicating, and I was talking. And that's the one thing that with my self-medication that I did, that I was able to do, is I was able to just talk about my feelings without having to really feel them. But I would just talk, and I would tell people how I was feeling, and then I would write, and I would write, and I would write, and I would write. And that came out of that poem that you wrote came out of one of those nights where I was just like, this is exactly how I feel. And there's nothing, I didn't have to be happy. I didn't have to be sad. I didn't have to be anything but where I was.
Was that poem was written while you were under the influence, while you were self-medicating? Mm-hmm. Was it just drugs, or was it alcohol, or what was it? Was it both? Was it just anything to say? Yeah.
Yeah. It was definitely both.
I honestly remember thinking, I actually even remember telling my mom, I'm surprised that I'm not under a bridge, like cracked out right now. Like I really, really, really was, because my personality is I have addictive personality. I've had to overcome a lot. I mean, it took me a long time just to quit smoking. And I remember after Talon passed away thinking, I had to consciously make the choice not to turn to drugs, because I knew I would be under a bridge, cracked out, because I wanted nothing more than to numb out the pain. I wish people, no, I don't wish that people knew. I wish people understood the pain that a bereaving parent feels, because I think that they would be so much more gentler with us.
Oh, I do too.
It is, you are in such a fragile state, I feel like, for so long. I don't know how long. I call it my coma. I was in it for 2 years and 3 months before I decided that it was time to find some happiness and some joy. I don't know what was your, how long did it take you to step out of it? And what was it for you? What was it?
So that's an interesting question. And that's something, again, I write a lot about, because for me, it was, I can tell you defining times of transformation, but to this day, I can go back to that moment and I can break down, and I can experience it all over again. But I do know that it was at my 2-year mark when I thought I was doing a lot better, and I was feeling, I was feeling like I could start to live again. And then all of a sudden, like, it was almost like I made the analogy of it's like fizzy lifting drink, and I'm like, it's like bubbling up, and I'm dealing with these issues that are coming up, and I'm like, why are these things all of a sudden coming? Like, I thought I dealt with this, but it doesn't. And so I called a therapist, just like an online, just help me understand what's happening, because that's how I've dealt with a lot. Like I've what's going on in my brain right now. And she actually said that with trauma and tragedy and things like this, you actually are in the state of survival mode for the first 2 years. And after that 2-year mark, you start actually, your brain starts
catching up.
Yeah, catching up and being like, okay, you can actually start living again, but you're also going to have to still deal with it.
Let's talk about, because I want to step back, because I want to talk about this, because I call it trauma brain. I don't think people understand. The 2 years, I'm so glad that you said, I didn't know that there was like a 2-year thing, but what I can say is that makes sense to me, because it was 2 years, 3, and I thought I was doing good too. Like, I'm like, oh, I'm starting to come out of this like funk, right? And I'm starting to feel like, I felt like I was processing stuff. And then all of a sudden, I think I started realizing that I wasn't okay. I don't know exactly what it was, but I knew I wasn't okay. And then I kept hearing the phrases, you have to sit with the pain. You have to feel the pain. You have to deal with your trauma. You have to, like, and the more it was like a God nudge message, right? Because it kept coming through and then it was then that I was like, all right, let's do this. And I did. I probably for 3 months, I let myself feel everything that I had been pushing, because you do, right? Like, we numb out and we push so far away because it is so incredibly painful. That is why I feel like suicide was so scary for me. Like, I've said this on a previous podcast, but I gave myself a 24-hour rule, because I knew that if I could just go to sleep, right? If I could just go to sleep, and tomorrow could be a new day, that the pain would be less than it was in that moment, because those moments are so intense, right? They're just I just want to get out of here. Like, you just want out of this moment. And I just knew that if I gave myself 24 hours, that moment was going to pass, and I'd have a new reset, a new 24 hours.
And there are times that I'm like, I'm healed. I'm okay. Like, sure, I still feel pain, but like sometimes, but like I'm healed. And then I had to get to a point where I told myself, it's okay that I'm not okay sometimes. It's okay that I'll get triggered when good things happen, when there's anniversaries of course, like every anniversary of my son, his death day, and we call him Caleb days, but so his Caleb day and then his birthday, that whole month, like I don't know if it's going to hit on that day or a few days before, or sometimes the whole entire month, and it's just heavy. And I'm like, and so then I just had to start accepting that even though I don't walk a life of grief necessarily, I am an angel mom, and that comes with its own challenges. And it comes with those times when it's like, so my Rainy Days Foundation, I actually started a few years ago because I thought I was going to be helping parents heal from loss and grief of their child. And then it transformed because I kept getting these families and these kids into my world that were struggling, like they were fighting illnesses or diseases or sicknesses or whatever. And so then I was like, well, maybe it's trauma and tragedy. And so I kind of started doing that. And then all of a sudden I met this family where his child that was the same age as my now son, my DJ, and he was going in because he started feeling sick, and he ended up having to have a heart transplant. And the crazy thing about that, which is not, it's not crazy, it's just like, this is how my life is. But my son donated his heart valves because it was the only thing that they could save really on him. But he donated his heart valves to save another child's life. And when that happened, in that moment, I got the letter and I saw it and I threw it on the table and I said, oh, great. And I never actually dealt with it because I was like, I don't know how to deal with this right now. I was 25 years old. I just lost my son. I wasn't in a relationship. I wasn't like, I had great people supporting me, but it was still like, I was alone. And so, and I didn't have other kids that I needed, that I was
take
care of it. So anyway, so I was like, I don't know how to deal with this right now, so I'm just not going to. And 13 years later is when that happened. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is it. Like, this is what Rainy Days was meant to do. Like, it's my son always had, everyone always said he had the biggest heart, and people say that I have the biggest heart. And now I'm saving little hearts. And I'm like, this is it. And it's so special. And I know that my son is with me every time. And the thing is that's so awesome about all of it is that we've been able to do more work with him on the other side together than we ever would have even imagined doing with him here.
Right.
And the thing that I love most about thinking but like you were saying, like, it doesn't mean that when I have these moments, I'm so happy that I get to make a difference in these people's lives. And I get to have little events and we make money and I get to give them hugs and I get to feel my son. And then I go home and it's quiet and I'm alone or with whoever. But when I sit in the stillness of it, I bawl my eyes out because I know why I'm doing it. And as happy as that makes me, there's still that piece of me that I don't get to hug my boy. Yeah. So
you're doing it for him because he's not here.
Exactly.
It's that attachment to, because he's not here.
Yeah.
This is the legacy. And it's a beautiful thing, but you're right. With those moments when you're separated from the legacy part of it, like when I was doing the hoodies for the homeless and the hoodies for the vets, I would inundate myself in it, for his legacy. But when everything was all said and done, it was a fall apart moment because, that was for him and he's not here. Rainy Day Foundations, what it is, what does it do? Like tell me a little bit more so people understand. In fact, I think go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. Rainy Days is, we're a nonprofit organization that helps families that have kids with CHD, so congenital heart disease. And right now we're pretty small. We're there to give support. We're there to build a community because when they go into that hospital, they have such a good support system and they have people that are there for them and the nurses and the doctors and, all this stuff. And then they go home. And when they go home, they're kind of stuck to doing it on their own. And my biggest thing, like I love building I've always built my own community around the things that I need. And I love that feeling of never feeling alone. And so I wanted that for them as well, because their lives have changed. And even though they haven't lost, some of them do actually lose their child. And then, of course, we're there for them as well. But they've still lost that idea of what it should have been with their child, because now they're not able to live the life that they imagined with their kids.
You had talked about how, they kind of lose the loss of who their child was. And it kind of triggered something that I was just thinking that as a parent too, that would be hard, right?
Oh yeah.
It's actually been my tender mercy with Talon is that he absolutely did not already want to be trapped in his body. I mean, when he had attempted suicide, that was his whole thing, was that he just felt like he could do so much more outside of his body. He could experience so much more outside of his body. And so the fact that he wasn't left in a body that was crippled and where he wasn't going to be able to be the Talon that we knew was a tender mercy. And I know as a parent and because of your foundation, I know that that's something that is probably hard as a parent is to know that they will never live their lives the way that they had previous. And you do mourn the loss of that child as well. You mourn the loss of, their future and things, just like when you lose a child, they never get to get married. They won't have kids of their own. They're not going to be the uncle, that they were going to be an amazing uncle or that all those memories that just all of a sudden stop. And I think that is why it's such a mind trip for parents. You had a passage in your book that says, "The night I lost my mind." I kind of wanted to touch on that a little bit.
Oh yeah.
Because this is also something that I have experienced, those breaks with reality. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, and it was also another night that I was extremely out of my mind. I was definitely wasted. But I got to a point where I started getting angry, and the anger feelings are probably the worst to deal with, because I started getting angry, and then I started like kind of being like that F you to the world, like I can do whatever it is that I want. And I knew this movie that just came out that was about her son disappears, and everyone, like it's this whole, and for right off the bat, it's in my book, but the name of the movie escapes me right now. But basically everybody around her tries to make it so it's not real, and that she never had him to begin with. And so of course my mind at that time was like, I'm going to watch this movie because I need to see it, because I'm that person that's going to dive in and I'm going to feel those emotions and I'm going to get to the root cause of it. Well, it wasn't a good idea. And I watched maybe 10 minutes of this movie, but just the fact that I knew the concept of it, I started to freak out. And I had a psychotic breakdown. And I was looking on the computer, and I was like, looking up his name, and I was looking up, he really did exist. This really did happen, and all this stuff. And then Dave, he's my ex-husband now, but at the time, we weren't even together at that time. He was one of my like best friends support systems. And I was totally in love with him too. I knew that like, he was like Caleb's dad when his dad wasn't around, even though we weren't together, because he was just so present in our lives. And, so he heard me, like I was sobbing hysterically, and he came in and he's like, "What are you doing?" And he freaks out and he picks me up, and I'm kicking and screaming and like, "Tell me he was alive. He really did exist, or he's not dead, or whatever," like losing my mind, crying, screaming. And he like throws me on the bed and just holds me until basically I pass out, because I was crying so hard, like lost my freaking mind. And then I like got up the next day and I was like, oh, that was intense.
But I'm glad, I think it's probably a common theme with bereaving moms, because again, God's protecting us, right? So I feel like we kind of have this buffer. I've tried to explain to people that for me, my child loss has kind of put me in this third dimension where I don't feel grounded with the reality that's here on earth.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not crazy and far out there, but it's almost like you're floating in this reality because you have this child that, right, is not physically existing in this world, but you know your child is somewhere out there, and you can't separate the two. For me, I cannot separate the two. So it makes it very hard. The other part is the mental break part. There's so much after I feel I think because did you become an empath after the loss of a child, or were you ever an empath? Or
I've always been an empath, and I've always been very connected to a lot of things. Like, I did not have an easy life before that, and so it was, but yeah, so I was already.
Okay, you had trauma before, so I think trauma breeds empaths, and I think that there are people that are just born empaths. I think my son was one of them. He's been an empath his whole life. Mm-hmm. But for me, I was never an empath. In fact, I was kind of one of those like tough love moms. Are you bleeding? No, stop crying, wipe your tears, brush it off, you're fine. And then after Talon died, I think because the pain was so intense, empathy was a new, and I had no idea until after I healed. I was not in because you're numb, right? You're not in touch with anything because you're pushing. And until I healed, my very first outing, it was after the it was probably a 2 year, 3-4 month mark. I was out in a public situation, a public setting. Then I had 2 friends with me, and it was kind of a situation where they were letting me down for this business opportunity that we were all going to go into. But because of, I could sense and feel everything. I could feel my friend's energy towards me. I could feel her protecting me from my other friend who was there to kind of let me down. And then I could feel all of the energy in the restaurant, and it was busy, and I could feel the waitress's chip on her shoulder. Everything about that night, like I wanted to run out of the restaurant because I felt trapped, and the emotion and I could feel everything, the energy, and it was the tribute that I had my first mental breakdown that night, because the energy, the empathy, the feelings, that it was so strong, and it was nothing I had ever experienced before. I'm still adjusting to it. I can't be around people. There are a lot of people I still cannot be around for long periods of time because their energy, it's intense. Yeah. It's intense, and I just can't be. If it's negative or toxic, for sure I can't be around it. But there are some people that just drain you too. Like their energy is so high that you can't be around. Anyway, so yeah, that was my first mental break. It changes you. Grief, trauma, change. And I know it looks crazy, right? I mean, have you felt like, oh my gosh, I'm a mental case? And I'm sure people watching this are going to go, God, they are crazy. Yeah, I'm listening to their stories, and I'm pretty sure that they are crazy. But I felt that way sometimes, but it's true. I mean, like, I know I'm not crazy because I got a double rainbow on my birthday, February 4th, in the middle of freaking winter. A double rainbow on my birthday. I got a double rainbow over a cruise ship in the middle of an ocean when it wasn't even raining, when I asked my son to show up. You know what I mean? And he showed up. He showed up and visited me 4 days after he passed away. I felt his energy for probably 10 minutes. So it does feel crazy. And that was the thing I was going to say, is like, when you're a grieving mom, you kind of have this, I kind of say I could never date a guy that doesn't believe in the magic outside of this, right? Yeah. There's so much magic that happens. Can you tell me of little things that maybe Caleb has done, or little signs or anything that you've seen from your child?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, well, I have so many. I mean, I know at this point I've gotten connected enough. Well, and I've always been able to call on him when I need him, but it started with, well, for one, I went to California soon after he passed to visit my grandparents, and they took me to the ocean, and I saw a pod of dolphins in this place that I've never seen dolphins before, and it was him. So dolphins are definitely my sign. There was the sign of the rainbow right away at the beginning. And then the other cool thing that my signs, so my friend Rose that I was telling you about, her daughter went to Africa for the Peace Corps, and she got in a horrible accident. And this was 3 months after Caleb passed away. And my friend, she was in a coma and everything. Like, they happened to they got her to the closest hospital, which was 2 hours away from the accident. Her brain was hemorrhaging. There happened to be a neurosurgeon there doing rounds, and got her stabilized and flew her to South Africa. And I told my friend's like, well, I'm going. And I was like, well, I have nothing left here. I'm going with you. And so I ended up going with her. But the day we found out, I just started sobbing, and I was like, Caleb, you have to go and be with Christina and keep her alive, because I can't let what happened to me happen to Rose. And I felt him leave. And when I arrived in Africa, I walked in those doors to the ICU, and I felt his energy pretty much like stand up and open his arms, just envelop me and be like, you made it, Mom. And then that for 11 weeks I was there, and that was my first major healing, like what I did to heal somebody in the hospital when I was there. And I didn't even know that it was energy work or healing or anything like that. I mean, I'd had like massages and cranial work that Rose's other daughter did on me, and those were amazingly magical, because it really helped me through a lot of the trauma. But then that was the huge thing. And every time I need him, I can call on him. And there was another time that keeps poking in my head, so I'll go ahead and tell this.
He's like, Mom, talk about this time.
You should tell this story.
This is a good one, Mom.
Yeah, it is. So there was one night when I was at that point where I was really contemplating suicide. Like, I was really in a dark place. And it was like, it got so dark. Like, they talk about, I mean, if you're religious or anything, or our listeners are religious, in the Bible, they talk about the darkness that sweeps over and all that stuff. Well, it happened to me, and it was so dark and it was so black that it was crazy. It was scary, and it was so insane. And I was just like, I was terrified. Like, I was terrified.
That happened to me twice. Same thing.
I text Dave, and I was actually like, I said, I need you here. And he goes, I can't be there right now. And I was like, I'm scared. I don't know. And he was like, pray. And I said, I don't remember how do I pray right now? Like, I don't know. And he's like, just pray. And so I didn't end up praying, but I started talking to Caleb, and I was just talking out loud. And I was like, I need you here. I need help. I don't know what to do right now. I'm scared. I'm like, all of these things. And I was holding this tiger, which I still have, this stuffed tiger in my arms. And all of a sudden I felt it become my son. And it was so weird. And this is where, like, I mean, you can believe that it was me making stuff up or not, I don't know. But then like the darkness kind of, I mean, it was still dark, so it was in my room at night, but like it lifted. And the next text I sent to Dave was, she's okay, I've got her. And he's like, who is this? Who's there with her? And he goes, I love you, Dave. And he's like, Caleb, ? And then it kind of like stopped. And like, that was it. Like, that was probably the most intense experience that I've had. And that was soon after he passed. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't it amazing? So I had a similar experience. Mine was 4 days after Talon passed, and everybody kept telling me that they could feel Talon. You know, everybody could feel Talon's energy. They could feel him around them. And I was kind of, my heart was kind of hurting because I couldn't feel him. And I didn't understand why me, his mom, couldn't feel him. And it hurt. And I just prayed that night. I said, Talon, I just need to feel you. Everybody else gets to feel you. Like, why can't I feel you? And I went to sleep. And during my sleep, I felt this energy come into my body. and the way I would describe it, I've never done a hard drug in my life, but if I had to guess, I would say it probably felt like heroin, how I would guess heroin would feel, because I felt this like energy go like into my body, and it stayed in my body, and it was fluid, and it felt super warm, and I knew it was him, because it was an energy. It wasn't just a feeling. There was an energy, and then it just was like this warm. Have you ever gone through is it the MRI machine where they put the stuff in you and your whole body kind of gets warm? It's kind of like that, but not as intense, and not, but it was that warm, and there was the peace, and I just knew, and the second that it left, I just knew it was Talon. I was enjoying it when it was happening. I knew it was him. And then the second that it left, I woke up and I knew immediately that he had just left me. And it was so magical, and it was so amazing. And I remember him leaving, and I just said, oh gosh, I wish I could do that every day. If I could just do that every day, I would be okay, right? But let's talk about that, because I'm sure every bereaving parent the thought has crossed their mind, right? I can assume the thought has crossed their mind, because it really is an intense pain. I don't think you can verbally put into words what it is, because it is. It's behind you. It's in front of you. It's around you. It's inside you. It's under your skin. It's in your heart. It's the emptiness. Like, there's so much that encompasses the pain of a loss of a child.
Yeah.
So because of that, and we get to those really low, dark pain points where it's like it's so much, and it's so intense that you kind of just would rather just not be here, right? But for you, Chalese, what would you tell other bereaving parents, or even not? It doesn't even have to be somebody that's lost a child. That there are people out there that are, their trials may be different than ours, but just as devastating. There's people out there that are losing homes, that have no place to go, that maybe can't feed their family. They don't have a job. Their businesses are closing. Maybe you just don't know. You don't know what people are going through. But there's somebody out there right now that is in the worst place possible mentally, that feels like there is no hope, that feels like they don't want to go on, that feels like maybe they're pissed off at God. I know I've been there before, and we can talk about that too, because I know God saved me. I know God is with my son, and I just want to say that. But what would you say to people what advice would you give people that feel like they don't even want to hang on one more day? This is too much. It's too much, and they don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. What do you tell somebody like that? That's where we were.
So I've been asked this question a lot, and every time it gets to that point where you don't ever really know what to say, because everyone's situation is so different. But the one thing that I always have to come back to is just hold on. Mm-hmm. Just get through this next moment, this next breath. Like, just take a second and realize that this is your story, and it's worth writing. And I really feel that so strongly, because I had a friend once tell me, and I was going through some stuff, and it wasn't really intense. It was just, some kind of stupid stuff with a guy or whatever. And I wanted it so badly to just know the outcome. I just wanted to know where this was going. And she said, but Chalese, this is the meat of your story. You can't just jump to the end, because then you won't have all of this. This is the juicy stuff that is going to make you get to the next level of your life. And as hard as that is to hear, it's true. And really, when you're feeling alone, and you're feeling afraid, and you're feeling like there's nothing left, there is always something. You can always find one thing, even if it's one thing, to hold on to and to live for. That's worth living for. The only thing sometimes that kept me going was, I don't want to disappoint Caleb. And I don't want other people to go through what I'm going through right now for losing me. And it was such a powerful thing too, because I got to that point where I knew I was strong enough to handle it, even though I didn't want to be. I didn't want to be strong enough. I didn't want to feel that. I didn't want to have to do it anymore. I didn't want to have to feel it. And my life has not been easy. But I'm okay with that, because I get to write my story and I get to impact other people and I get to share with other people my journey through this. So when they're going through it, I can relate and I can be there. And even right now, like if this is the way I'm doing it, just saying, hold on till tomorrow. And like you were saying, like, just wait till morning. Just wait till morning. Because in the morning, you can wake up and you can maybe find that one more thing to hold on to. Mm-hmm. Even if it's that cup of coffee.
Yeah. It really is living in I mean, I know that's what's helped me is that 24-hour rule, and then just living in moments, like just taking things one moment at a time. And I find when the real dark, painful ones are hard, right? But they're farther and fewer and in between. Yep. They're still hard, and it still takes longer to get through them, because mentally you have to get to a place where you can let go, of what you're feeling. But you learn to live in moments, and you learn to take each trigger, each anxiety, each fear, each, and you take those moments and you work through them, you navigate through them, you find ways to cope, you find ways to eliminate triggers or work through triggers, or not have them be as significant or as impactful. It's you learning how to live through, these traumatic moments. But yes, in moments we find joy, we find gratitude, and if we can just hang on in these moments, we make it through to the next moment.
I was just going to say, that's actually the gratitude concept. It has saved my life. It really has, because there is always something to be grateful for. Sometimes you have to dig deep, but sometimes it's, if you just can find that one moment that you're grateful, one thing that you're grateful for, as small as it might be, that's enough. And I've really learned how to find gratitude even in the tragedy of losing my son. Not that I'm grateful that I lost him. I'm not saying that. But there is gratitude in the tragedy because of how many lives I've been able to impact in these 16 years and 7 months of dealing with this trauma and continuing to go through it.
One of the biggest obstacles that I came across was my relationship with God, because for a long, long, long time, I was very angry. And it wasn't like I was angry at him for taking talent away. I was angry because I felt like it was personal. I felt like I had done something wrong for him to leave me in this state for what I felt like was going to be the rest of my life. I felt like I was being punished. And so I don't know if you did this. Did you do an inventory of your whole entire life to see at what point did you piss off God enough that he really wanted to stick it to you? Because I really did that. Like I went through and I felt so guilty. Like I felt like I had caused my son's death because God was punishing me. I really felt that. I don't know if you felt that, but I was so angry because I didn't understand how I didn't deserve to be loved. I didn't understand what I had done to deserve this pain for the rest of my life. This for the rest of my life. What did I do that I now have to live with this for the rest of my life? And that was hard. That was so hard for me to reconcile. And it wasn't until I started recognizing that there were so many other parents that had lost kids that I did not feel like deserved it. I don't think actually any parent deserves it. But there were so many parents that were so valiant and so loving and so beautiful people. And I thought these people didn't do anything to deserve it. And if they didn't do anything, then I probably didn't do anything. Like it literally was me reconciling it that way. And it took that. And now I feel like I don't have a religious relationship with God, but I am definitely in tune, right? Like I definitely know I've learned that living in moments, and when we navigate and we just allow ourselves to live in moments, God has so much more control over our lives right? He leads people to us. He will put us moments and we allow him to work through us. Do you find that has happened with you, Chalese?
So, I have a very interesting relationship with God, and it did, like, there were absolutely times that I was extremely angry, and I was angry at God, and I do have a relationship with God. I also believe that God is so much bigger than just an entity. I call it the universe or energy or God.
Yes.
Well, depending on who I'm talking to, because I believe in it all. Like, there is nothing to me at this point that I'll say, no, I definitely don't believe in that, because I've been shown so many things. And for me, I usually speak in terms of the universe, just because that's what I do. But it's the same thing to me. Like, it's that higher power, my higher self, that spiritual realm that's so, like, we don't know, it's so hard to put a finger on, like, what that means, but that has definitely opened up to me. And I shut it down for a long time. I was like, I was always like in energy and a little bit here and there, but then I also cut it off at a certain point, and I was like, I'm pushing that aside. That is not what I'm going to work on. But it always comes back, and it always comes to that point where I know without a doubt in my mind that there is more to life than our physical being. Like, there's just, I've had undeniable experiences, not just with my son, or even, like, I don't see necessarily things, like, there's so much that I've learned too, but I feel things and I know things, and my intuition is that much more connected. And the people that come into my life, like, I'm so connected to them.
That's why I talk about God nudges, because it happens so frequently, and especially now. And God nudges, I feel like, are our way of God saying, pay attention. That person is being brought to you for a reason, or you are being brought to that person for. And I've seen so many of those things come full circle. So many. I just did an interview with Rocky Detweiler, and his is definitely like God nudge after God nudge, and it's amazing to see us come full circle, because he was the whole entire reason why Tom was even why he left a legacy. So not the whole. He was the beginning of Tom's legacy. So that was an amazing thing. What do you think? Because I always feel like there's so many things that I would love to tell people that have not lost a child, because there's so many things that people ask, or they'll say, or trigger things, or whatever, and I've learned that, at first there was a lot that was very offensive to me, because when you lose a child, you're in such a sensitive state of mind. But I've also now since learned that being offended is a choice, right? Like, when we're offended, there's something that we have to work through.
Yeah.
So and again, one of them was when people would say, "I'm so sorry for your loss." I think because it was such a repetitive thing that you heard over and over again, it became so offensive to my ears, because I thought, it's so disingenuous, and that was an offensive thing to me. And it took me, again, being self-aware and realizing it's my own crap, to realize every single person that told me they were sorry for my loss, they meant it. They were sorry for my loss. That's the only way they knew how to say it. Those were the words that came out. And for some reason, it was just so offensive to me. Well, because my world just stopped. My son's gone, and everybody's saying the exact same thing to me,
Oh, but with me, the night of his funeral, my friends took me out to get me drunk, and this girl was there at the bar, and she was like, and my friend told her, she just buried her son today, and she goes, "Oh, that sucks." That sucks? Like, that to me was like, you don't even know. Like, I lost it.
Yeah. It's so hard, because, again, how insensitive. That was so I didn't believe somebody said that. But again, it goes back to, okay, that seriously was seriously, I don't even think I could excuse that. But going back to, when people say things or do things or whatever, those triggers, we have to recognize that it's our stuff, right? There was a meme on Facebook that said, if you don't heal what cut you, you'll bleed on those who, no. if you don't heal what cut you, you'll bleed on those who didn't hurt you. And I think
that's a good one.
It is so good because it's true. Like if we're not aware of what offends us or what our triggers are, that's all our own stuff, right?
Oh, I'm going to use that. That is an awesome. I love that.
I mean, even if somebody is a jerk, even if they're like this lady that said it sucks, right? I'm not even, I can't even go there. No, I'm not even going to. But when somebody says, I'm sorry for the loss of your child, and I get offended because it wasn't sentimental enough for me, right?
Or they're in a better place. Like that thing, like, no, they're not.
Like, it's part of God's plan.
It's,
that one was so hard for me. Because how am I supposed to like God, right? The guy that's supposed to be my rock when everybody keeps telling me that he did this, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, I get you, girl.
yeah. That one is not a good phrase. For all the listeners out there, please do not tell us it's part of God's plan.
Right.
But again, it's our trigger, right? It's our stuff. It's our stuff that we have to deal with. And I think this is all part of healing, right? And this is true not even just for trauma. This is true for life. Anytime we get that sick, like offended, like it sets off our jerk alert, that is an indication to you that you have something you need to fix.
For sure.
You need to fix it.
Absolutely.
There's so many jerks out there in the world, and there's so many amazing people, and then there's amazing people that are just having bad days and being jerks, right?
Yeah.
But until we learn how to let like this stuff that comes at us not affect us, that's our healing. There's something
and it's also like it's a process though, right? I mean, you got to be self-aware to be like, okay, so I understand that I'm being triggered right now, and it's not you, but this is what I'm being triggered from. But if you never get to that place of self-awareness or healing, no matter what you're going through, you are going to blame everybody else. You are going to hurt people that you love, because that's going to come up. You're going to handle it however so if you're triggered by something in your past and if you've never handled it, you are going to eventually hurt somebody that you love. It's just, and then that person's either going to recognize that and be able to deal with that with you, or you're going to lose them. So like, handle your stuff, like let it come up, feel it, and start the process.
Yeah. I think that is a common theme between people who are thriving as well, is that being self-aware. I think people that are self-aware tend to, not come from a victim mentality, because they're very much aware of what part of this do I own. And the truth is, in every relationship, two people each one of us owns some part of it. Always. Yep. And so, yeah, being self-aware, there's a lot of healing in being self-aware and being able to say, what part of this do I bring to the table, and what part of it do I need to fix? Yeah. And it's a beautiful thing when you can get there, because that's when you find the joy and the happiness and the gratitude and thankfulness, and because you're not living in a world where everything negative is being done to you. Mm-hmm. Everybody hates me and everybody's doing stuff to me. No. Own your stuff, yeah. And then choose happiness, choose joy, choose gratitude, and choose your mindset. So what is one thing that you feel like you would love other people to know, who, what do bereaving parents want other people to know?
I honestly, it's just to be gentle and understanding, and realize that the pain we're already feeling is enough to feel. We need to feel love. We need to feel support. We need to feel accepted for even, 17 years down the road, when we're having a bad day and we're like, oh yeah, I was just triggered because this is a Caleb memory and it's coming up, and I'm angry right now, or I'm sad right now, and it's okay. And that's the other thing that I want people to understand, that it's okay to feel whatever it is you're feeling with it. All the emotions, you're going to experience every single emotion, and it's going to be okay to be angry and freak out. And it's also going to be okay to smile and to be happy in moments where you're like, maybe I shouldn't smile yet because I just lost my kid, or I just lost my, my world just crashed. How can I be smiling right now? because they want you to. They want you to smile. And when you're smiling, they're smiling with you. And when you're sad, it's okay because they're not there. And just every single feeling you feel is okay. And that's the only way to get through it, is accepting it and acknowledging it and embracing it and truly healing. That's the only way to truly heal, is when you embrace all those moments.
I agree. Embracing them, sitting with them, all of that. Really quick, if people want to get a hold of you or they want to know more about you, they can go to www.chalesetalks.com. Mm-hmm. Correct? And
yes, that is correct.
Tell me what's on your website.
So on my website is the link to my book. Also the link to my Rainy Days Foundation. I also, I do a lot of healing and energy work. I don't do that mostly like for the public, but I do help people heal. I like to say from the inside out. It's very nutrition based and really goal setting, things like that I help people with. And I mentor them through a lot of those processes. And I also am just starting my own podcast. It's a grief podcast that I'm doing with a really dear friend of mine who lost her husband about 10 years ago. And we're starting this because of these conversations that I get to have with you. And there are conversations that people are afraid to have, but we're ready to have them. So.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of healing in storytelling and conversations. We get to talk about things that don't probably normally come up. And with us being so isolated and COVID happening, I mean, a lot of people aren't sitting around having these conversations, right? So Chalese, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you come and see me soon. You know, well,
I'm going to. It's going to be in my plan.
I hope so. Bring Carrie with you. It'll be a lot of fun. I appreciate you. I love you, sister. I'm thinking of you. I'm watching your journey. I'm so proud of you and everything that you're accomplishing. Don't give up. Don't give up. You're doing the right thing.
I won't. And you either, because I'm watching your journey too, and I'm always here for you. So this is how we build a community, right?
This is how we build a community. This is how we influence people. All right. Love you, sister. Thank you.
All right. Love you too. Thank you.
Soon. Bye, honey.
Okay.